So, Arts in HD, as Kendra mentioned, it comes out of the Hill District Master Plan. And when it was developed, almost 10 years ago now, about that, it was, in the process was even before that, there was a section of it that said that there should be an ongoing arts work as a part of the neighborhood's redevelopment and strategy. And so at that time, that piece was given to the Hill District Consensus Group. And that has been a project that some of us have been taking on since that time to try to keep this idea of arts and culture as a part of the neighborhood's next phase of growth and development, and to keep this idea that it wouldn't just be a plan that we put down on paper, but that there'd be some people who would try to hold on to the actual ongoing practice of this. And so it's been an ongoing process. And last year, we developed a plan that we'll be able to share early in the next year. And the overall goal of this was to to mark the neighborhood as a liberating land and people, and to increase the amount of it. There's already plenty of markings of liberating land and people in the Hill District already, but just that we could help to increase that marking. And even this occasion here is an effort to help increase that marking. And RCHD, I don't know, Kendra, if you have that, or we even collectively, we have some advisory board members right here on the call. So Lakeisha, Becca Zala, Mr. Redwood, myself, Kendra. We have the Hill CDC with Marima Malyans and Jordan and Felicity, who's now just leaving the CDC. We also have Dr. Kim Ellis, who's a part of that, Norman Brown, an artist in the Hill District. And I'm missing a couple of people with.
There's Dawn Surgis.
Dawn Surgis, right.
And then Brother Mo and
Sister Charlotte.
And Charlotte, yeah.
Exactly. So collectively, that's who makes up Arts in HD in terms of an advisory board. And we're going to be changing our structure in the upcoming year so it can be a membership-based organization that people can join collectively, and we can start to even begin to have some even broader democracy about how we have this question of culture in the Hill District. And hopefully all of you will consider becoming members. And one of the things that I hope that we'll talk about this year is like, what's the underlying approach that we continue to develop and talk about in terms of what it means to be about a Black liberatory space and people. And so one of my interests, when I was coming out of Pitt, Rob Penny Ibaye gave me this copy of the Kawaida theory, notes and an outline of the Kawaida theory, which I was really taken with when he gave it, and it basically says that there's a whole theory and approach in Kwanzaa, and these principles represent that. And it's got a lot of interesting elements to it. And I'm interested in how we can talk about that more, even in my own work, but even as a community that has a real connection to it. And its overall point is that the crisis facing African-American people is one of views and values. And so we wanted to have a conversation with people who actually have been practicing the principles and having Kwanzaa in their lives. And so everyone who we're going to hear from today has been practitioners of Kwanzaa, or even, one of the things I was interested in talking to Mr. Udin about was a part of an organization that was at one point considered taking on Kawaida as its overarching guidepost. So we're going to just jump into a conversation, and we're going to open up to talk back to you after each person talks. So we're going to talk to Mr. Udin for 5 to 7 minutes, then we're going to open it up for you all to ask questions or make comments, and then we're going to go and hear from Lakeisha, and the same thing, then Bomani, same thing, and with Ms. Redwood. And then we're going to open up to a general conversation. So hopefully you all will make comments or put comments in the chat, but we want this to be, really free flowing. So my first question to Mr. Udin is just with your experience of, Kawaida, you're an artist as well as a politician, as well as an education advocate. How do you see Kuumba as you think about like organizing and making deep change in the Hill District? Any thoughts you have about Kuumba? Any thoughts about your history with Kawaida It'd be great to hear any of your views about it.
Thank you. I want to thank you and all the other artists in the HD for organizing this conversation. And thank you for the work that you do. It's been about 35 years since we first introduced Kawaida and Kwanzaa into the Hill District and into Pittsburgh. It started, it grew out of the Black Liberation Movement, which in itself grew out of the movement in the South against racism and lynching and legal segregation. And so in around 1968, the movement shifted, the focus kind of shifted from the South back to the North and was being organized by people from the West Coast with the Panthers and the US organization with Maulana Karenga. And many of the manifestations were organized in local communities in Detroit, in Chicago, moving on in St. Louis, moving on toward the east, in Detroit and Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Each one of those cities had a movement of cultural nationalism. And it was, of course, it was a very large movement in New York, and the headquarters was in Newark, New Jersey, under the leadership of Imamu Baraka. Because those organizations took the shape of local leadership, unfortunately, they did not come together in a single unified Pan-African national movement. It remained separate movements, separated by the boundaries of those cities. But it thrived nonetheless, and I guess the common theme among them was the support of African liberation and the African liberation movements that flourished throughout the continent. The Kawaida was a way of organizing, documenting, and giving guidance and organization to try to contain these disparate movements in a single theory. And in some places it worked better than others. For the most part, it tended to work locally more than it did nationally. And each one of those movements grew up on their own based upon their own leadership. The physical manifestation of African nationalism and Kawaida was a program, a drug treatment program that we organized called Ile Elegba, the House of the Crossroads. It was painted red, black, and green. There was a red, black, and green unk painted. We dyed concrete to shape the ankh on the sidewalk. And the residents who were trying their damnedest to kick the habit of heroin and crack, part of our theory of recovery was to get them involved in the Black liberation movement and cultural nationalism, manifested by the language that we spoke, the clothing that we wore, the way we wore our hair, the diet, the food, and as well as the religious expression. Some people were heavily influenced by Islam. Others were influenced by Yoruba and other African traditions. And it was most important, not so much what can we look like, but we hope to influence what can we be like. How can we treat each other better? And frankly, that is still the struggle, not so much about what we look like, but how we treat each other. And the Nguzo Saba is a handy guide for our own self-development, as well as our relationships with our brothers and sisters. Asante Sana.
Okay.
Asante.
Go ahead. Well, let's open it up, y'all. Does anyone have any? I saw some comments in the chat. Anyone? Other people offering other memories. So please share a memory or a comment or a question.
Was there anybody who is alive who was at the YMCA in 1968? I think everybody's dead.
That was where the first, Pittsburgh's first Kwanzaa celebration was held, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
we held the Kuumba. We had the Kuumba in the gymnasium at the Center Avenue Y.
It was on Kuumba.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Wait, Mr. Udin, what do you, and I know you were also, I think, involved in a group of poets as well. What do you think about, as you look at it now, and art and culture in the Hill, and what is your feeling about this idea of marking increasing the level of which marks the neighborhood, and clearly you are literally marking the ground, and what's your thought about where it is today? Well,
I think that the potential is always there. We all of us are struggling to learn more, to learn better, to be better, and we fight against racism. We fight against ignorance and oppression. And the arts and the artists they can be, in their best form, the tip of the spear. They lead the way. They light the way. They go first and light a way for a path for the people to follow. That has been the role of art and artists, to be creative about how we move forward and to help move us forward. Whenever we had community meetings in the past, we always opened up our community meetings with artistic expression, a kind of a carryover from the church religious movement to some extent. But the arts and culture always had a role. I'm reminded also, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the dedication of Freedom Corner. 20 years ago, we opened up Freedom Corner, and it is the largest artistic manifestation in the Hill District. It is at the gateway to the Hill District. It is in itself an artistic rendering, and it has stood the test of time. People use Freedom Corner as though they own it, because they do. There's nowhere where you have to go and sign up and get a permission slip. They just come onto the property and do what they got to do. And I hope that we'll be able to keep it that way, but it is a fine work of art, and it is an important entrance to the Hill District. You know you have come into the Hill District when you pass Freedom Corner.
That's right.
That's what art does.
That's right. I think we had a question in the chat from Renee. I can almost read it from here. Renee, do you want to just come on and ask your question?
Yes. I want to know, Kwanzaa is so important, and for to be able to really teach it so it can, be something that we do all the time. Is it a way that we could get a curriculum in the schools that teach it year round about it?
That's a part of the whole fight for quality education. Yes, there's a way we could do it. You got to fight in order to be at the table, to control the direction of the curriculum. And that's the reason why I got on the school board to begin with, to try to influence how African-American culture and African culture is going to show up in the public school curriculum. And you can bet, I just got recently elected as the president of the board, but the right wing is very strong in Western Pennsylvania. They are going to oppose the cultural inclusion in the curriculum. The criticism, they're going to start attending board meetings and attacking the board as we continue to diversify the culture of the curriculum. So it's a part of the fight. It's a political fight. You have to join the fight and struggle to win the fight. And that's how you get things that ought to be in the curriculum. It's a part of the fight.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Carol, you had your hand up, and then we're going to go over to kick it over to Kendra, talk to Lakeisha. Go ahead, Ms. Carol.
Or I just wanted to share some good times on the Hill, and we really had a good time through dance, modern dance, and we always we held those, or I would say the House of Culture, the K Boys Club, the Center Avenue Y Bob, in the Northside Elks. They really uplifted the arts culture through Majorette. What else did we do? We did Majorette. We were in parades. We were always dancing all the time. We thought we were the Supremes and the Temptations. a lot of the times, but it brought us together because at the time when I graduated, when I went to Heron Hill, we were all kind of like one hill, but then we graduated and some went to Shinley, some went to Fifth, and it kept us together. And it was always a good, common meeting of the minds, especially, you know, when you divide and go to schools and, you know, you can stay connected. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate what the Northside Elks did as far as like drill team, major rap, because people will tend to forget that dance is a part of art as well, right? And like I said, we used to dance during the street mobile, the Kenora Field. You know, we were always asked to be a part of whatever was being celebrated in the Hill. And I also want to say the House of the Crossroads saved a lot of family members' lives and loved ones' lives. I really appreciate that. Sala, was there a Mr. Bobby? I don't have his name right. I know he moved to California. What's his name, Bobby? That was in the beginning of it.
I don't remember.
I
I'd have
can't
to have
remember.
more. I'd
But
have to
he
have
was-
his full name, then I could tell you.
Yeah, I have to think about it. He was very inspirational because at the time, Center was just so intergenerational with people walking up and down all the time. Center, Wiley, Heron Avenue, everything was always going on, right? And I just loved it. I couldn't wait till I grew up so I could just hang out, but I was already hanging out as a kid, you know, doing the dancing, and in particular going to the House of Culture with Coach T and Mr. Ellis and different ones that I can't remember at the time. But yeah, I always like to lift up that part of growing up because people look at art in different ways, right?
Mhm.
And so, you know, even though we have a lot of jazz artists that came out of the Hill District, you know, I always love keeping and uplifting that, even like the Dale Tones and Tony Campbell and different ones. I always lift them up, Poogie Bell, different ones. So I just like to remind people that dance and music is also a part of this art.
Conversation.
Other than what you can see,
Right.
you know, it's almost
Yeah.
like the five senses.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, I saw Shay, you put a question in the chat, and then I want to even say to Renee's question that maybe we can get back in the second half, which is Miller School. Because, you know, one of the things about Kawaida is that the greatest critique is a corrective. And so it's one thing to criticize something, but it's another thing to offer an optional alternative. And I feel Miller School is an example of the alternative, but then I think we have a lot of lived history and story about that school. And what does that tell us about, you know, our current situation? But I'm gonna kick it over to Kendra to ask our next couple of questions.
Okay, and before I do that, I just do want to say that Shay's point about the out of school time is that one of the things that Arts and HD is looking at in the future is to be more intentional about how we work with the community intergenerationally to make sure that all generations are not only represented, but like actively engaged and participating in what we're doing. And hopefully coming out of that will be programming that will touch all generations and be coming from those generations as well. So that is something that we're definitely talking about and working on. So I'm going to move to a question for Lakeisha. Mr. Udin brought up the Nguzo Saba, and we know that Ujamaa comes out of that is actually named from the Nguzo Saba, and Ujamaa is doing important work in our community and around the city. So Lakeisha, can you talk about how you tried to mark the neighborhood with cooperative economics and what you've learned from it through your work?
Sure. Well, Kwanzaa greetings to everybody in the Zoom room and on Facebook. So I think, you know, it's our work in and with Ujamaa, you know, and it's been about marking the neighborhood. I feel like the neighborhood in some ways, right, has been marked. So it's not like we just showed up and things happen, right? Sister Salita Hickman at the time lived here as the founder. And I moved here upon getting involved when we began to organize. And so, one is I feel like the neighborhood has that history, right? Like that's just a fact. And so it was about, at the time in which we conceived the collective as this organized body, it was at a time in which there was just a lot of contentious energy right around the lower hill and a fight around resources and a fear of like gentrification. And so it was really in some ways a response to seeing efforts that could undermine the history, undermine the existing culture, right? And wanting to be proactive in doing something about that. But then at the same time, right, inside of that was also, right, as Black people, as Black women, looking at our own lived experiences, looking at ourselves as creatives and the various things we were making and selling, right? And thinking about, right, how could we use our collective creativity to further energize the community, right? And so, I always say to people, I said this at our Kwanzaa on Wednesday, right? Like when we think about Ujamaa and think about like economics and like money flow and all of that, right? I always want to remind people that, right, like, money is just this symbol. It's a tool, right? And so if you go anywhere around the world, right, people have different forms of money, right? And it's been a thing since forever, right? That folks created a tool to exchange, right? And so it's really about how we exchange with one another. And I feel like so much of our work is really about uplifting the value of Black people and Black people as the originators and really the movers and shakers of humanity, right? And so I feel like that's really the core. And so much of our work is also about healing. And so it's recognizing that the value over time and how Black people see themselves, how other people have seen us, right, through the oppression of white supremacy, how we have begun to see ourselves through the lens of white supremacy and through white people, right? And really internalizing these really negative thoughts, ideas, and practices for ourselves, and then reflecting them out to each other in our families, in our communities, right? And having to live and reap the negative harvest of what that's been for us. So much of our work, right? Like I think about when people come into our space, right? We always talk about people having a Ujamaa experience, right? And the experience is really one of like affirmation. It's one of remembrance, right? And it's one of really uplifting the value of our humanity as Black people, as descendants of African people, as like Africana people. So one thing that this journey has taught me, it's helped me to dig deeper into my understanding of what it means to be Pan-African, right? So even when we talk about Black people, right, I oftentimes use Black like interchangeably and saying like Africana people, right? And using that A on the end to really signify like wherever Black people are at in the world, right? Because as we began to grow our collective, right? People oftentimes, especially, you know, being a nonprofit within philanthropy, right? And people talk about like just solely African Americans. And the collective has always had members who represented the diaspora, right? Like Africa and the rest of the world. And so it was really important for us when we say that we center Black people in our space, that we're centering all of the different expressions of what it means to be a Black person, right? And that, you know, folks who are from the continent find home here, people who are from the Caribbean can find home here, right? And bring their unique practices into the center, right? And that as Black people, we all get to share in that, right? One practice that we have used and have uplifted was the practice of the ASUSU, right? The ESUSU, the SUSU, this rotating credit and savings practice, right? Which came out of Nigeria, but traveled through the, really traveled through the world, but found, you know, a deep home in the Caribbean islands, right? With Black people. And so when we began to talk about that with our members, right? Our sisters who are from the islands were like, hold up, we can tell you about the SUSU, right? And so they were the teachers, right? In that space, because they had in their close family, right, all of these experiences of this practice that as African Americans, right, we didn't have. And so, yeah, so my understanding and my love for Black people has just deepened through this journey. And the other thing that I also want to share is, like, you know, in the spirit of Kuumba, our creativity, right? And within Kwanzaa, right, that mantra of, you know, do as much as we can in the ways that we can to make this better, right? And I feel like I'm so glad that it's written in that way, because it doesn't just center creativity around quote unquote arts in the sort of limited way in which sort of the American culture has us think about art, right? And so when I think about creativity in spirit, right, I'm thinking about this dynamic force of change, of like transformation. And so that belongs to everybody, right? Everybody is a creator. Everybody is creative, right? Some people just have a particular gift and tool, right, for how their creativity is able to be manifested and show up in the world. But everybody has a power to create and change and transform themselves and move the spirit and the sort of like energy in their environment. And so I feel like that's the role that we've tried to take on, right, in some of our programming with our young people, right, and really wanting to seed the next generation of artists and makers, but really change makers, right? Like folks who are able to use their creativity to spark change. And so for me personally, right, it took me a really long time to even identify myself with the word artist, because I was in a mindset of limitation in how I thought about arts, right? And so it really, you know, I was like a late bloomer artist, right? I didn't start dancing till I was out of college. But when I look back at my life and when I look at, you know, my different experiences, I'm like, oh, wow, I was creative all of this time, right? But I feel like we have this power, and that our work is about using our creative power to spark the power in other people and to remind our community, that we have the change to, or we have the power to change, to transform, to heal ourselves, right? And to be the best, to be the excellence that we can conceive. So I'll stop there.
Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you.
Shay.
So does anyone want to respond to some of what Sister Lakeisha has offered today about Ujamaa, their work in cooperative economics, and also as it relates to Kuumba?
Well, Alafia, this is Kafri again. I just wanted to say, sister, you are definitely an artist. You know, I have some of your work, and so I can definitely say that you are an artist. You have, I think you did the jewelry for me and my wife's wedding, which is beautiful, and we have those pieces, and you've done a couple of other pieces for us. But you know, I also wanted to say something about the Hill District as well. You know, I'm not from the Hill. I grew up out in North Versailles, but I remember as a child, my mother was an artist. Actually, her intention for artistry would have been to throw clay. She found that out when she had a reading from Baba Eric Rucker, and then we enrolled her in classes at CCAC. But she was always an artist. She was they called her Jazzy in high school, but she would take me to the Hill District as a child. And my first exposure to kind of the arts was in the Hill District. And also the use of the Hill District Library, because out in North Versailles, the library was about as big as my bedroom. And of course, they didn't have anything that would be of interest to an African-American boy. And so the use of the Hill District Library was one that trip I look forward to on the Saturdays. And her best friend, actually, Charlotte Carr, my aunt Charlotte Carr, has a space in the Hill District now. And she actually she grew up next door to me out in North Versailles. And so I know that the work of Kuumba in the community continues to grow in the Hill District. I hear a lot about what's going on. And I just wanted to say that, sister, you are an artist in my eye. And I appreciate your work.
I'd like to,
Thank you, brother.
if I could, I'd just like to address, see, I feel especially privileged, even though like I'm not an artist and I haven't really been, I'm all new to the whole concept of all of it. But I feel especially privileged because I was there when these ladies were in a room in the Hill House, in an office with a desk, where Terry Baltimore sat. And they were laying it down. And to see their space now, it hasn't been, I know particularly, personally, that it has not been a walk in the park for them. It makes me feel very emotional when I watch them just kind of never give up. And even when it just looked dire, you know, they kept on and kept on. And they're the quintessential folks who I think speak to Kuumba, using new ideas to create a more beautiful and successful community. I think they are the quintessential example of that, because they went from 0 to 60, not in 5 minutes, not in 5 days or 5 months, but by steady keeping it going after time and just blossoming into a space that it now has branched out into teaching and empowering young girls, and just that is highly, yeah, it was 10 years, Becazella. I know exactly, it was 2010 when I became privileged to their information and would see them in that room, just one little office. And then they got that space over in 1835, the building next door. And just to continue to, and to reach out to other women and to continue encouraging everybody. It was just, I found it really just kind of like a phenomenal. And imagine that on steroids. If that model was repeated and repeated and repeated, especially the tenacity, and again, I'm sure that there were personality issues sometimes, but overall, it didn't stop the flow.
Right.
And I think those are the
going.
things that made it outstanding and made it truly what this principle speaks of.
And it makes it, because it's still going.
Yeah.
And
And I appreciate that, Renee and Brother Coffrey. And I just want to say something really quickly too, because it has been a struggle. But I think that a part of it also has been, right, like when we're talking about lighting the candles, and going from the black to the red to the green, right, and going back and forth. Like, I feel like that, thinking about that is like symbolic of what this process has been. And the other thing I wanted to add is that, and I was telling somebody this the other day, when we think about creativity, right, and how we use our transformational energy, right? And then also how our energy gets used, right? So like when you're under like an oppressive force, right? Like, because a force is energy, right? When you live under domination, right? It's really this dominating force tapping into your energy and moving it and doing things to you, with you, in ways in which you feel like you're not in control of your own energy, right? Like, I think a great example of that is when we look at Black music and you look at like hip hop specifically, right? And the ways in which the vibrations of hip hop gets used to transmit really negative messages into our communities, right? Coming out of something that we created that was so powerful and transformational for Black and brown people, right? And so I think that, that's like the sort of heart and soul piece that I think we have to go home with, is that like our creativity and the energy, like the spark of that Kuumba, right, can be used to build and destroy, right? And for us, right, like when Sala was talking about, the struggle part, the fighting to get the things we need, right? Like, we can use our energy to destroy things, to combat systems, right? And that's all necessary. And it's also important to recognize when we need to be, or when, whoever you are, right? When you're in a season of building, right? Like I used to be at every protest. I used to be in the fight in another kind of a way that was more combative, right? But now I recognize that I'm in a season of building and using my creative flow, my creative Kuumba energy to build the things that we want to see in the world, right? Like to build the institutions, to help to build the curriculum, to build those things, right? Because we have to destroy the system we're in, but also to use that energy to build the things that are going to feed us, nourish us, and heal us.
Absolutely.
I could just
appreciate-
point to one focus on Ujamaa. Ujamaa has been the most difficult principle, I think, for the Black liberation movement. And you are drawn to it, I think, because only the strongest, only the best warriors are ready to fight the Ujamaa
don't know when.
battle.
But
The,
I went in
if
there.
you look at all the 7 principles, Ujamaa is right in the middle. And it draws the most heat throughout the entire, my entire experience with Kawaida. The struggle around the intellectual struggle around how to deal with capitalism, because we are in the belly of the world capitalist beast. And so how an oppressed people in the belly of the beast deal with capitalism is a part of the struggle that we still struggle with. And it was what kept the Pan-African movement from gelling as a whole, because some people were ready to follow African socialism, some followed Marxism, Leninism, some developed a kind of a Afro-American capitalism. It's been extremely difficult to solve the economic problem because we live in the heart of the world economic devil. We live in the heart of the global beast. And it is a beast who watches us carefully, watches us constantly, and targets us when they think that we are a threat to their local, national domination or world domination. So know that it is those of you who take on the economic challenge, you are drawn to it because you are the strongest and because it is the most difficult part of the struggle. They will let us sing and dance and play horns and do whatever we want to do. But when you touch that money, you are a serious threat. And thank you for your contribution to that battle, Lakeisha Wolf.
Shay, thank you, Mr.
Sure.
Dean.
Thank you, Brother
And we-
Sala.
I see we have, hold on, Miss Carol. I see we have 2 more comments. Miss Carol and Sam, I definitely am going to get to you, but I just want to, in interest of making sure the discussants that were in these questions that we presented have an opportunity to share. I'm going to come back to this. So please write a note down, keep in mind what you're going to say around this subject, because I think this subject right here can be a whole conversation in the second half of this. So I'd like to move on real quick, if you don't mind, Miss Carol and Sam, and we're going to get to you and go to Bomani. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Go to Bomani and ask a question, and then Justin will ask a question to Mrs. Farris-Redwood, and then we will open up the second half, the last, say, 20, 30 minutes for these other kind of more broad discussions. So Bomani, just circling back a little bit to just kind of our practices, our family practices of Kwanzaa, can you share with us how you've tried to mark the neighborhood with your family practice of Kwanzaa, and share your history and why is it important to and to have been so consistent with it over the years?
So thank you. First, I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Kendra Ross, and to Justin for putting this day together. This very important conversation around Kuumba. Also one of my favorites. Ujamaa is my favorite day to celebrate cooperative economics, but Kuumba, how we make our communities more beautiful and beneficial than the way we inherited them. That's the other longer extended definition outside of creativity. And when I think about like my early practices, so it was good to hear my father reflect on kind of like some of the historic milestones and how it developed. I don't know if you remember this, Bob, of coming back east and you would pick us up and we went to Newark. I don't know why we went to Newark, but I would imagine you were catching up with old friends in the movement. It was, something that was kind of, interesting is that as a baby, my twin brother and I came home as baby B and baby A. We didn't have names for about a week. And it may have been longer. My mother was getting sick of it, she said, because we were waiting for Brother Amiri Baraka, rest in peace, to name us. And so in Kuumba, when we talk about to name ourselves, speak for ourselves instead of being named and spoken for and defined by others, I just kind of think about my childhood and the what it meant to carry the name, my brothers and I, to carry African names. And I think my father also had us, he had all of his siblings, everybody in my family had an African name change. And I think that's important when you are talking about marking and naming the hill, right? That's a really powerful piece of it. There were attempts to, in the lower hill development, we've been at this since 2006, but a couple of years ago, there was an attempt to kind of brand and market the lower hill differently and start because of all of the crime associated with the greater hill. And I gave this example of, I kept calling this woman across the table, intentionally calling her by a name that was not her. So for example, her name was Susan, I kept calling her Christine or something like that. And everybody kept wondering, why is he constantly misusing her name? Does he not know her name? And I said, you all are looking at me strange and you have a negative feeling from me referring to her as Christine, but that's how it would feel if you would change the name and identity of the hill or make some attempt to. And so that began to kind of open up the doors for how we introduce our cultural frameworks and history in the hill. Coming up practicing Kwanzaa, my mother was like the only woman in the neighborhood celebrating it, there was nobody celebrating Kwanzaa. I mean, we would go to like community events like out east, like in Homewood, but for the most part, it just wasn't heavily practiced. But by the time I got to high school, I had firmly grasped the torch, made sure I knew all of the symbols and all of the principles, not just the immediate definitions, but the extended definitions of the Nguzo Saba. And I started bringing my friends from Reed Roberts into the home and having them celebrate it with us. And so to this day, my friends they can't tell you nothing about the Nguzo Saba, but they are at my house every year for Kwanzaa, and they're bringing their kids. I can show you all pictures of the little kids they're now in high school, but they've been coming to our Kwanzaa celebrations. And so that's rewarding. I'm hoping that we'll have some means by which they grab the torch as I did and pass that on. I wanted to say, I'm really happy to see now a lot more people are embracing our culture and our cultural celebrations like Kwanzaa and Juneteenth. It was a long and lonely space for a long time. And so I'm just happy that they are now more robust and that people are actually forming organizations like Ujamaa Collective and others like Arts in HD to utilize the Nguzo Saba in our everyday practice so that when December 26th comes around, we have much to celebrate about. I'll stop there. I do want to make one point about the cross-section of how important it is for us to own and control real estate, and for the purpose of developing our group economies. There's no better way to shape and mark the hill by having a very robust and active neighborhood. In your first spaces, what they call in real estate, your first, second, and third spaces. So your residential, your commercial, and then your kind of recreation and open space. It should be flowing throughout. But the driving force of it is your real estate. And so, Carol, when you were talking about all those places on the hill where you all used to party, I started running down my names and of spots where we used to have house parties and hip hop parties. And one of them was called the Africa. That was my favorite one. It was right up there on Wiley. And so just having places like this, if you step back and look back at it, it was because somebody in our neighborhood controlled the real estate. They owned it. We did what we had to do to begin to own the commercial or own the residential space. And so I'll leave with one example. At the corner of Center and Kilpatrick, one of my good friends owns a store there, right? And every day every time we talk about his project, he talks about the big mural that he's going to have, the inspirational mural that he's going to have on the side of his building. And nobody can tell him that he can't put that there. You know, he wants Garvey and Malcolm and all of these people that we don't hardly see in our visual expressions throughout the commercial corridor. That's the biggest part for him. And so there's this correlation between the ethnic and group economies, the real estate within them. I think that's a very important piece to focus on when we think about the cultural markings of our neighborhood.
Ashe.
Beautiful. Well, the last question we're going to go to, it's funny because I think I didn't come to the Hill. I got there, Miss Howze, who I'm glad to see on the call, put a invitation out to the Black Student Union at Pitt for having tutors at the Hill House after school program. So that's how I came. But soon after I met Mr. Redwood at the Hill House, and then not too long after, and I can't really remember the year, but the Redwoods and would have these like jam and Kwanzaa at their house, and it was like a true party. It was lots of people would come from all over the place, and just thought about Ms. Redwood. Just maybe you might share kind of like the way in which you all held that. What was your thinking there? And then maybe you might even say a word about you raised two boys to be artists in this neighborhood, and what that experience has been like. So maybe you could just say kind of like what was behind your event, and then this raising of children to be artists here.
Hey, greetings, Kwanzaa greetings and blessings to all on today. And thank you for inviting me to participate. As I've listened to the other speakers, it's like, wow, I can hitchhike so much upon what all of them have said so far. And I've tried to organize my thoughts in a way that one keeps me focused, because it's so easy to talk about how wonderful this journey has been with these sons. But I want to start by saying that my own childhood experiences, I had to make notes so that I could keep this thing succinct, but my own childhood experiences, my education, going to primarily all African-American schools. I went to Belmont, Homewood, I went to Westinghouse, and then I went to Lincoln University, the first HBCU. I love to say that. Hope there aren't any Cheney people on the line, because that'd be a big fight. But anyway, and then I did my graduate work at University of Pittsburgh. But the experiences, so far as I'm just kind of going through this, my background as a social worker, as a clinical social work administrator and health educator and realtor, help to sort of, like all of us, our experiences contribute to those of us that have become parents, how we manage this parenting process. And along with Carl Redwood, my husband, community organizer, we came to, how we came to adopt Kwanzaa was a combination of all those areas that I just spoke of in terms of who we are, our backgrounds, and what we do and have done. So although we have held other value-based programs in high esteem, like the Institute for the Black Family, they had a set of values that we really adopted and loved. There were values that came out of the Freedom School and Carl and Dominica and different ones that work with, come up with values, sets of values that we've embraced a lot of values-based programs. But the thing that I guess really hooked me into Kwanzaa had to do with, this is a poem, and I'm gonna move over just a little bit because I wanted to tell you the reason that I chose this part of the house is where we have representation of the development of our sons sort of in art form on the wall. And there's a poem right under the picture that depicts that it takes an entire village to raise a child. And I want to read this to you. It says, be mindful, my people, of what you do and what you say. A child was born in the village today. Be thoughtful, my people, for the things that he hears and all that he sees will pattern his ways and the life that he leads. Understand, my village, that the responsibility lies in each one of us that's seeing through his eyes. For the inevitable fate of the African nation begins in the raising of God's newest creation. And
Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
yes, and so thank you. So this wall, you can see the pictures and stuff. Underneath, what you can't see is a shelf that holds all of their symbols of achievement. Their what are these things called? Trophies and all kinds of things about the recognition. But this is one of my favorite parts of the house in terms of as it relates to Kwanzaa, because we embrace Kwanzaa for several reasons as it relates to primarily these children, in my view. We identified it as a powerful tool and a resource to support our parenting style and needs that included this African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, and more widely known now and accepted as a concept, not originating from Africa. And why I say that, if you recall, I think it was I'm talking about the woman who ran for president, who took the whole thing about the takes a village to raise a child. People, never said it came from Africa.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary, I couldn't think. Thank you, Hillary. Never made the association. At least I don't remember it happening. That was something that came out of Africa. But the importance of it to me signified and was it sort of was a driving force in how we could raise these children, get them to adulthood, sane, healthy, whole, productive, positive, etc. So the other thing about Kwanzaa that I love so much is that the timing of Kwanzaa, because it comes, at the end of the year, right before the start of the year, the new year, and it helped us instill in them the need for planning, because you're doing goal setting through Kwanzaa, through these principles. And when we would have Kwanzaa at our house, those people, maybe some people, I think there's some people on who come here, we would have newsprint where people could write what their goals were for that particular principle of the day, what their goals were for the coming year. And having our sons have the opportunity to interact with adults that were those kind of thinkers and, understood the importance of planning. And we had this, for one of the, maybe more than one, we had this poster, so I hope you can see it. It says, you don't build your shield on the battlefield. That's the African proverb. Plan your work and work your plan. Okay. So the whole thing about understanding the planning process, what it means, how you accomplish your goals through short-term and long-term planning was a big thing that we incorporated through Kwanzaa. So it wasn't just at the end of the year, it was all year, but it was at the end of the year, the beginning of the year to kind of get you thinking. And so that was a big thing for us. Other thing that we were able to help them understand is that Kwanzaa could be incorporated at all of the levels of our life, individual, family, work, professional, volunteer, leisure. And these principles, they weren't just, at a certain force, just for this particular holiday. So, the point was that they could, embrace these principles at every level. And one of the things that I loved in terms of the individual level for them as young people, they became, and we got them involved in the Rites of Passage program that was spearheaded by Dr. Hubert Lohman and Bill Lohman in our community. And that was a way of helping them again, from this young age, get it, okay, and get to these rights and on up to their young teenage years and young adulthood. And the other purpose was it supported our desire to demonstrate to our sons how to positively engage with and in our community. And for them to recognize others in the community who were also representing this type of positivity and family support. And they didn't just represent themselves in the world, that they stand upon the shoulders of those who came before us, and that could, as well as those who have poured into their lives all along. So that was another important purpose of us of adopting it. And also, it was so much fun for them, it was something that they look forward to every year. They look forward to it, except for the part about cleaning up and getting ready and all that. We had pushback, but outside of that, it was a positive experience, and they got to know so many of the artists in our community. A lot of people came were actual artists, and even those who didn't attend our Kwanzaas, throughout our participation in the community, that they got a chance to actually interact with a lot of the artists in the Hill District, as well as other communities, but I'm going to focus primarily on the Hill District. And the other purpose was, in part, a big part really, to include the elders, family members, and loved ones and friends who had deep religious practices and affiliations. Some had other beliefs and commitments, and sometimes it's hard to, people are deeply religious, I don't want to do this thing, I don't want to do that thing. Just try to help people understand that Kwanzaa is not a religious holiday, it's a cultural holiday, and how, everyone can benefit from that and participate in that, and, not feel any ways inhibited or misunderstood or those kind of things at our events. So that was a big piece for them. And maybe I gotta find my notes. Okay, here we go. And so it was just an amazing experience in terms of how we embraced it and how they grew from it, how they also have embraced it. And all the people that in the Hill District, was one of the questions was how, one of the parts of this was thinking about all the people that they got to work with and learn about, hear about, not to mention, you had Miss Beckham at the Hill House, Miss Beckham and Damaris Cooper and Reverend Wright and Tomanika, all the people that put together their program there. And then you had, the Salida, and I know it's always dangerous when you start naming people because you miss people. So I'm trying to, so forgive me for that. But, your George Jish, your Amir Rashad, Mark Southers, who is still providing arts, not just arts entertainment. You know, he did a lot in terms of, and is still in terms of embracing young people in all facets of the art, in terms of theater and he also did a lot of before he even really was established. He did a lot of meetings at his home with artists, and so just influencing the neighborhood was just wonderful. And you know, August Wilson, my goodness, the fact that he came from the Hill and how they got to learn so much about him and what he contributed, and be it some of the plays that August wrote, and you know, how Carter, I have to say this because some of you know that he's a professional actor now. The first play that we went to see at Mark's Theater on Penn Avenue.
Members, we just gonna roll past the fact that he's like on FBI International all over the world now. We're just gonna roll past that. Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna roll past because I don't want to be obnoxious. I'm just saying. but
He's a superstar now.
Anyway, yeah, I don't want to be obnoxious, but how he got to that is what I'm trying to talk about in terms of all the people that he and Maurice. Maurice also, he's an actor. He's a filmmaker, producer, drummer, djembe drummer, been drumming since he's been 8 years old. Okay, I could go on and on about that. So all both of them, you know, and just the influences of, you know, because there were other arts organizations that we work with. And I can name them and I wrote them down, but I don't want to take all the time. But it's just been so fulfilling to see and to participate and be involved with seeing how this actually played out in the lives of people who you know, God's sons, he allows to call ours, but how their development, how they grew out of it, and how Kwanzaa, you know, was a driving force in all of this for us. And so, wow, this whole thing about the power of art has been amazing to me, just on this journey. And Kuumba certainly, you know, it's obvious that it has been a powerful influence for us. And I'm just thankful that the times that we did host at our homes, you know, the people who came, and it was, you know, it was wonderful, just the fun of it, but having that influence here, like trying to create an environment from the art that we have here. We have most of the local people. We have Salita's work. We have everybody's work here. They leave here, they have been fortified with who they are from the symbols that are the symbols and symbolism that we've tried to create here. And so this whole thing about creativity, you know, being able to express it at every level of your life. I'll give you real quick, I just have to share this. I remember one time I was saying Carter, he was complaining about his teachers or something, I don't know. There was something going on with this, he didn't like him. I was saying, well, you're an actor, just act like you like them. I mean, you know, act like you act like you like them. Doesn't matter, you know, don't get caught up in the distraction. But it's the whole thing about how we use creativity to enhance our life, to solve our problems, to help us be who we really are in the world. And so I want to stop there because I have a lot of notes and things, but I'm just saying there's so many people, artists in the city, and you know, wow, I lived in Homewood, grew up in Homewood, East Liberty. Went to grew up in when I graduated and came back, lived in Wilkesburg, then I moved to Highland Park, and then Carl's from the Hill, so we moved here. We've been here for 30 years, so this is the longest place, the longest neighborhood I've lived in, and it has been an interesting yes,
ma'am.
You know, journey. So anyway, I'm done.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you, for everyone. I think actually there were a couple of folks that we, we had a second round plan, but I don't know if we'll even do that. But I know that Sam had a comment. I think Kendra, you put in the chat a couple other folks who had comments, and maybe we could get those folks in just to share wherever they are now with it.
Am I first?
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Justin and Dr. Ross for putting this together. I am not an overly religious person, but Kwanzaa is one of my favorite situations, parties, well, get-togethers, gatherings, whatever you want to call it, right? I think that culturally speaking, we don't get many opportunities to just sit in camaraderie and not try to solve an issue, but just to have like discussions or conversations, right? Like I think that a lot of the times Black people don't have the privilege of just not being warriors, not being the people who are solving issues for everybody else. So I do appreciate, the Kwanzaa gatherings. I wanted to say that I want to give Lakeisha her flowers, right? Because I don't think we collectively give her enough credit for being ahead of the curve of going back to our roots or going back to I think we've gone too far as human beings, right? Like innovation, we should have stopped a little bit. Now technology is like surpassing humanity, and that's just not a natural way to live life. And so whenever you talk about cooperative economics and things like that, I think I was reading this book. It's called Collective Courage. I don't know if anybody else has ever read it, but it is about cooperative economics or socioeconomics and how Black people, Indigenous people, the stewards of the land are naturally inclined to be socialist, communist, whatever type of name that they give us outside of our spaces. But Ujamaa happens to be the natural way that we navigate economics, right? Like we have always been trading, bartering. We have always been ensuring that the lesser of the, sorry, my phone did a thing. But we have always ensured that the old, the young, the sick, like everybody gets to live a good life, right? And in our work with the Greenwood Plan, I'm starting to realize that going back instead of going forward to go forward has been the best way to navigate these spaces. And so I just want to, I don't know if I'm the youngest person on this call, but I feel like I'm usually one of the youngest people in these conversations. But I just want to appreciate all of the things that the Hill District and its stewards have taught, our generation, from Mr. Howze to Dr. Ross, to all of the individuals that have collectively come together and gave us one piece of the values of Kwanzaa, right? Like I think everybody has their own superpower, everybody has their own focus, everybody has their own thing to give to it. And I think that being in this space as a young person, like growing up with technology or the advancement of technology, if I had not been in these spaces, learning these things, learning historically outside of the education system, the biased education system, I would have probably ended up, like a lot of my peers who don't care about community. They care mostly about self, which is understandable, right? We have to survive. But a lot of people end up moving away, moving out for their own survivals, instead of collectively getting together, solving our issues, and creating kind of what Lakeisha did, right? Like a terrarium inside of a system that does not support us. So I just wanted to give her flowers for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I was just sending this note to Kendra, but I'll just say it. Maybe we go to the folks who are able to share their time and discuss this, maybe for a final word,
But before we do that, I just want to give, because Miss Tony has been waiting for.
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
Just give her a minute real quick.
Yes, Miss Nadia, Sister Nadia, my apologies.
Sorry, I know her as Tony. She was my dance teacher. I called her Miss Tony. Sorry.
I have many names, many faces, and many names. Well, I'm excited to be on this line today, and we had a Kwanzaa last night, so my background is kind of junky, so I might take it off and just talk. But anyway, for me, this is exciting because, as Sister Tawnya said, I was born on the North Side, was raised in Homewood in East Liberty, but went to Fifth Avenue High School. And I remember walking up Dinwiddie Street to Center Avenue and would hate to go back to Homewood because it didn't have the same energy. And, and so when I hear, my heart is on the Hill District because my first job was at the K-Boys Club, and so then I taught at the Dolores House Treatment Center and I taught at the Ozanam Cultural Center. And so I have some investments in hearts in the Hill District. And I remember Kwanzaa, going to different Kwanzaas and going to the Redwood's house. And it was like, whoa, that Kwanzaa was fierce. They would put everybody in that house and we would just live Kwanzaa. And I didn't understand Nguzo Samba as I do now, but it was a great introduction. So when I left Pittsburgh and went to Baltimore and DC and had Kwanzaa at Wababa Chuck, it made me understand the Nguzo Samba in a different way that I incorporated in my classroom. So for me as a teacher, the Nguzo Samba was not separated from character education. So I taught that in my classroom, especially in Baltimore and then in North Carolina, that they utilized my classroom as an example to talk about, and I taught fifth grade at that time, Brown versus the word education. And because we used the Nguzo Samba as a part of our classroom, I was able to incorporate the Willie Lynch letter and taught my kids about self-identity and some of the manipulation, even as young children. And then when I came to North Carolina, again, incorporating the Nguzo Samba as character as a part of their classes, that we got involved very extensively with Barack Obama running for president, that they wrote a letter, they campaigned, and we went to the convention and we wrote a book, and President Obama then at that time wasn't president, he signed my classroom's book, I still have it. And so they understood that whole principle of working together, Ujamaa and Kuchachakalia, and all of the different principles. So when I get back to Pittsburgh, and I'm gonna go back to Port as an artist. So I dance in most of these places all over Pittsburgh as an artist. And I remember, before I go for it, when I used to dance with the Pittsburgh Black Dance Ensemble with Bob Johnson and the late Bob, wonderful Bob Johnson. And he was sitting on the University of Pitt outside. And at this time, he was transitioning in his health. And he told me, he said, I need you to continue dance in Pittsburgh. So when we talk about collective work responsibility, that was a part of that. I didn't even understand the Nguzo Samba at that time to this level. I started a dance company after the Pittsburgh Black Dance Ensemble was no longer, it was called Just Dancers. And that was one of the only Black contemporary dance companies in Pittsburgh at that time. Then after that, I started a company called Safarasi. It was the first Senegalese dance company. And so I've been dancing as an artist in Pittsburgh and doing programs. But when I left Pittsburgh and came back I've been here back, I think about the last 5 years. I remember working and I was right around on the weekends and it was like nothing to do. Things had changed so much for me. I remember, like, as the sisters was talking about all the different places we used to go to, I didn't see anymore. And so while I had this complaining spirit, it's like God spoke to me. Don't be part of the complaining, be a part of the solution. So when a brother talked about having real estate, I didn't know when I came here that was going to happen. I ended up purchasing some land, 4.5 acres of land. And as at that process, I said, I still see people in Pittsburgh looking through the eyes of white people to be affirmed for their identity. We have all these wonderful, we have these events and people get honored and such as that, and people are doing great work in Pittsburgh. But what about land? As you said, there's power in land. And I didn't see that a lot like I saw in the South. And so I'm at the place now, as you talk about the Nguzo Samba, and we're talking about today, Kuumba, creativity. I stepped into that And I used my Kuumba to create a place called the SNS Sanctuary Arts and Events Complex that we can have as Black people, as people of color, that we can come to a place that's beautiful. It's not a hole in the wall, and it incorporates intergenerational things. And it's a place that, and some of the people who are on there have visited. And so I understand that now, the power of having real estate so that you're not dictated, and everybody's money is not good. So I don't take anybody's money to help develop the land. We talk about cooperative economics. And so the people who come here, who support this sanctuary, we take that same money and we keep turning around and putting something else in the sanctuary. So when they come back, they continue to have this beautiful experience. And so we move on, as I was listening to some of the sisters were saying, as a young lady, Samantha, you know, we got to get back to that place, not allowing technology be the force for our children as a resource. We are very naturally resourceful. And I was watching a video on Christmas on Facebook, and it was like this African village. The kids they were singing Christmas, some kind of Christmas song, but they have water bottles and they had some sticks, and they made it for their microphone. And then they had some other sticks and they had some strings, and they made it for their guitar. And I was just looking at that. We've always been resourceful, and we have to come back to that. And so, Sister Tawnya, as you was talking about the placement of Kwanzaa, think about the traditional celebration. Just before Christmas, how many of our people go into the red or stress about Christmas? But see, Kwanzaa is no financial burden. You use what you have. You use the Nguzo Samba to create. And so,
Miss Tony, but I don't want to cut you off, but can you make sure you put the website for SNS in the chat before people log off?
Oh,
so
yes.
Yeah,
because we're gonna wrap up in a moment, but we'll make sure it's.
I just want to make sure that people have a chance to know exactly.
Yeah.
The work
thank you, and I start preaching, so I'm excited. And so,
Great, sister.
So anyway, I definitely see, for me, I'm going to take it to the Hill District. For me, the Hill District is the only place in the city of Pittsburgh is a predominantly Black community, the indigenous Black community. And I think by the Hill continue to develop, then other communities can come and see what can be done. Or if they can't do the same thing, but come inside, come to the Hill and benefit and be uplifted and rebirth, as we talk about, and envision. I think the Hill is a prime place for that energy. And so I just want to continue to encourage everybody and salute everyone on this panel who live in the Hill District, who's doing great work. You are the model. You are the model, and if it never comes into place as we have any other indigenous Black community, the Hill District is it. And I'm right behind you, supporting you, whatever we do. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. So I know we're about 3 minutes over. If people have a few more minutes, I just want to, as Brother Justin was going to do, give each of the folks we invited, Mrs. Farris-Redwood, Lakeisha, and Bomani, 30 seconds to a minute to if they have any final thoughts they wanted to share. Also, if other folks have things they want to share about what they're doing, events they're having, things like that, like links that they have, if you could throw those in the chat. Not only can people click them here, but that we can also share them later on after this event.
Cool. Yeah, exactly. We can put them on Facebook.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I had a couple of talk about Black arts implementation. I'm Vice President of Development for Buccini Poland Group, which is the master developer in the Lower Hill. And one of the initiatives that speaks to the CSIP, or the Community Collaborative Implementation Plan, one of the focus areas, the 7 focus areas, is the Black arts and cultural legacy. And so I just wanted to share a couple of images in a way of an update of what some of the things that we're doing to institute and bring Black arts into development projects. So I'm not going to go through all. Can you all see these slides?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So just as a quick overview, this is a picture of the Lower Hill, and down here is the Lower Hill. The first building that we're building is the F&B First National Bank Financial Center, and the front door of that space is what we call the open space. And so there are going to be a lot of cultural arts activities. This is a framework. This has not been stamped, but this is something that in the near future, Dr. Kimberly Ellis, who is the Director of Community Arts and Culture, Director of Communications, Arts and Culture, will be engaging artists from all over the Hill and throughout Black Pittsburgh to really help inform us on how we should be partnering with fabricators and designers in the early stage so that this open park space could be actually beautiful and beneficial, to use the definition of Kuumba, to our community. So that's a quick one. Then I just want to give you an update on where we are with regard to Curtain Call. Brother Carl Redwood has been, and the consensus group as a whole has been a big voice for pushing the Curtain Call. And so here are some of the latest renderings that Walter Hood has and our design group has come up with to implement cultural arts and history into the Lower Hill. So this, for orientation, is Crawford Street. This is Wiley. And here from Wiley, going down from Crawford to below here is Fullerton Street. And so you would kind of, as an experience, you would kind of meander through this space. And in here are all these images of Black folks and our various experiences in the Hill throughout the decades. And you can meander all the way down. Here's how it looks from a street level view. And so they've been doing gathering a collection of all of these Hill District pictures. I think these walls are like 20 feet high. So this is going to be a really, it's intended to be a really impressive artistic display of our culture. And then when you go further down Wiley Avenue, you have this open space where it stops down at Washington Place. I'll stop there for interest of time, but there's going to be opportunities for small vendors to be able to provide goods, eateries, and things like that, food and beverage. And it'll be marked with, it's already marked with African-American images in the CAP project, and the same thing will be going across the street on the other side of Washington. So I just wanted to thank you for that, giving me an opportunity to make that quick update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Quick comment. That's all I want to make.
What is that?
Yo, man. Not about that. I wanted to let Renee know that I have been working with, or the consensus group has been working with Ujamaa, Lakeisha, and we've been doing a project called Kwanzaa Every Day. And we did it through COVID, and it turned out to be really successful, right? And it's around kids and their parents. And I got the idea because I work with a lot of low-income renters, and they're going through a whole lot. And so we've been able to use Kwanzaa and Sankofa Circle for healing and art, and the kids have been doing art along with it. And so people have been reaching out, when are we going to do that again? And so I would love for Arts in HD to join in, because going back to partnerships are very important. And our particular audience, they are really healing, and they need to be inspired and encouraged and know that they belong to the Hill, right? Because of eviction and displacement, and not just the Hill, a Black community overall, because we haven't been saying, oh, you have to be on the Hill to get our help or come sit in our circle. And we just want the support around the parents, family. So I believe this Kwanzaa Every Day should be every day around that. And then people can understand the Black experience, and also why it's important to heal and understand our history, because a lot of our renters don't understand what they're going through, you know. And me, I'm real kind of little radical. I'll tell people in a heartbeat, our ancestors built this country. We ain't going nowhere. Or it's a Black thing you don't understand. But Lakeisha has been helping me with the Kwanzaa and the Sankofa conversations, so I could be a little bit, so I could not just be so radical, right? I'm getting in a different mindset with age, so I love it. And Lakeisha is a great partner, her, Miss Frankie, and even Miss Sheba, everybody that we're coming in contact with. And our kids are really learning and appreciating.
And Miss Carol, if you have any information about what y'all are working on, because this is great, I would like to
I
take it
have
beyond this space.
to,
Can
I'm gonna send it out there.
Yeah, even if you could put it in Basecamp,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. Go ahead, Justin. I'm sorry.
So I don't
No, it's all
have any-
good.
So I don't have any information. I mean, I don't have anything to, I have something, it's very important what I have to say, because I don't have anything to tangible show. I want everybody to be on, if I may, everybody to be on the lookout for this incredible project that I had the privilege to work on with August Wilson House and Pitt University. Maybe somebody here has been involved. I worked on the oral history of the Hill by writing the oral history of our own Sala Udin, which was so exciting and interesting after we had 3 lengthy interviews. Also Carl Redwood. The oral histories of their families are going to be placed permanently in the archives of the August Wilson House for people to be able to use to go and see how things happened for essential families back then. And this is just to alert you to be able to look for that. It's happening right now. Yeah. There's going to be video clips and audios you can go and look at. It's going to be online. And just writing it has been one of the super highlights of my this past summer.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Ray. I think one last handcuff for you. You have a tight little wrap on something.
Yeah, Alafi, I just wanted to say that the one thing very quickly is that the examples of Sala Udin and Brother Carl Redwood and others in the community, you know, that community that also came out of the Black Studies program at the University of Pittsburgh. Those men and their families were a great example for how, and of course, Dr. Amos Wilson, an Introduction to Scholars, was a great example for me and how I raised my 2 sons, who are not 29 and 30 now, and have grown into fantastic young men who are solid. I wanted to say that, but I know I'm joining you all from Atlanta. I've been out of Pittsburgh for 12 years, and I just wanted to share, I put it in the comments that I self-published 2 anthologies, one called Cornbread, Fish, and Collard Greens, Prayers, Poems, and Affirmations for People Living with HIV/AIDS, and a second one called Sister Speak, which is a collection of voices and stories of women who are living with HIV from around the world.
That's beautiful.
Can I add something really quickly? That's okay. I just wanted to veg you back off of what Carol was saying around bringing families and bringing young people together. And you know, one of the things that's important to me is that when we think about like cooperative economics and wanting to, you know, do things around money and all of that, you know, and Brother Sala talked about how difficult that's been just in general over time. But a part of it is because, you know, we have a lot of healing to do. And so one of the things that we're going to focus more on in 2022 is bringing more people together. And so I wrote a proposal to Poise, and we have some funding to support, right? This is the work we do, whether we got money or not, because we dedicated to it, but we have some resources to put behind using, being way more intentional about using arts and culture to help people to unpack and to deal with the things that have gotten away, that have gotten in the way of us recognizing our values so that we can practice all of the principles of Kwanzaa better and more effectively.
Yeah, I think this has just been great. Oh, Ms. Redwood, you got the last word. We'll give everyone a last one, so please. Yep.
I just want to say say really quickly that I'm so happy to hear about the work that's happening. I just get an update on things that's going on. Lakeisha and Sister Carol and all the work you're doing with families. And, you know, I'm just hopeful that we can do more and evolve the kinds of works that you're talking about and things that we have, some of us experienced through Kwanzaa and with children at the youngest age. I think that, you know, children are our future. We know this, and we need to start with them. And oftentimes I get it that in order to start to work with them, we have to embrace their families and their parents and et cetera. And I'm just excited to hear about what you're planning, what you're doing, what you're planning to do. I just, you know, the social worker in me, you know, working with families and children for a long time just knows the need that these children need in terms of support and programs that help develop them from younger ages. You know, it's so much harder when people get older to help people understand and see and figure out and embrace some of the concepts we're talking about today. So I just wanted to share that. We got to do as much as we can to reach the children at the youngest age possible.
Can I call on you for help?
It's not so hard, huh?
Can I call on you?
I'll do what I can. I will do what I can. I will do what I can. I have some limitations that I'm not going to get into now, but I will do what I can.
Thank you.
I'm here for you too. If you want any financial literacy lessons for kids, I'm here for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Parents, as far as real estate too.
I wanted to say one thing. We started with our own money in the community, Grandpa and Grandma's Village Carnival, and it's a history carnival. We're always looking for people who's willing to come and teach the children the history. We have a rocking chair and a place for grandmas to sit down with the children and tell the history. Everything is named after Black people and how they invented most of everything. I put the website in the chat so people can see them. I'm not going to hold it. Thank you.
That's excellent. Yeah, and it's good. We need it. This is like, you know, we want to be both get everything out there and also want to be mindful of the fact people may be, you know, have other plans too. So we're trying to manage both of these things. So very much appreciative of it. Before we go to Harambe, Kendra, do you have anything else you wanted to say?
Nope, I just texted you Harambe time. So.
Oh, good, beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, I just want to say the last thing, you know, in the spirit of talking about Kawaida, that I feel like we heard the end, you know, this one statement always stayed with me, which is the greatest critique is a corrective, you know, and the greatest critique is an alternative. And so I feel like that's what we hear, all these different examples of that. So we know with closing with Harambe, we reach up and then we pull it back down, right? So we're pulling down our unity, pulling back our togetherness. And we say it 7 times, Harambe, Harambe. And the last one we hold, and then you hold it as long as you possibly can, but don't cheat. Don't go, and then start all over again. All right? So here we go. We're gonna start on 3. With Moja and Billy Tatu. Harambe! 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 You got it, Miss Redwood.
Yay.
Who got it? Was it Bomani, Miss Redwood? I think Miss Redwood, you got it. All right, we wanted to say, Asante Sana, thank you all for this, and we'll all be staying in contact. We want to save this chat. Grateful to Bomani and Mr. Udin for asking us to record it, so we'll have it here. It's on Facebook, and hopefully we can put this chat out because it looked like it was popping. I couldn't even watch it.
Yeah, I'm gonna edit it down a little bit, but I'll put it on Facebook and Basecamp.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, hope everyone has a beautiful rest of your Kwanzaa. Go ahead, Ms. Redwood.
I just want to say, look, I got a shameless plug. Forgive me. You know what? Those of you who don't know, my son, our oldest son, Maurice, has a company called Redwood Media. You know, he's available to do all kinds of things in the community around media needs and so on and so forth. Okay, shameless. I'm sorry. Bye.
It's all good, Ms. Redwood. You earned it.
He's on here. His logo's on here right now.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. So we're going to take that. Hope you enjoy your last day reflection of Kwanzaa tomorrow, planning your next year, and Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year's, beautiful Black people.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
This was one of the best online Kwanzaa celebrations.
So I got that on recording, so I can keep that.
Yeah. This was one of the best online Kwanzaa celebrations. It was perfect. It went really well. Kudos to you and Justin.
Thank you for coming and participating. Thank you, everybody.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Redwood, for coming and speaking.
Peace, everybody.
All right.
Peace.
Stay safe and stay blessed.
Yes.
Same. And stay Black.
Oh my